Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, coming at you live every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. It's been a little bit of a rush to get this show going tonight, but we come at you live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm here tonight with co-host David Griffiths. Hi, David. How are you tonight?
All good, all good, all good. These days, I seem to spend more and more time in discussions with people on Twitter who are determined never to vote Labour or Lib Dem again. So it's understandable, but it's worrying. Anyway, that's how I am.
Well, we'll have part of that discussion as we go forward tonight. Now, so you may have noticed that Mary isn't with us tonight. She's not well, not able to terrible sore head all day, not able to do the comments or to get online with us. So we have got the wonderful Grumpy, I can't even say it, the wonderful Grumpy Git, who is helping us from behind the scenes and will be dealing with all your chat messages. Now, David, what are you going to be talking about tonight?
Well, tonight I thought I would talk about the growing splits, in fact, in the leadership of the SNP.
Right, okay. I'm just going to put some of these messages up. Doesn't seem to be working otherwise. All right, of course, that's a big. Actually, I didn't know much about this, so I'm looking forward to getting enlightened by yourself there. Now, we're also going to be talking about the Scottish budget disaster and other
And
kinds.
of course, we have
yes.
week.
Right. See, it's quite hard to do with just the two of us.
That's
I've got to, Mary does a lot of stuff here.
Indeed.
Anyway, thank you very much for your comments that are racing in at the moment. We'll be back in a second to talk about this and much more. If I can find my way around here. Okay, right, back in a second. Now I'm thinking I've done it the wrong way actually for Grumpy to get into the chat. So let me just check a few things here. Sorry about this. It's just Mary's not here. The whole thing falls apart. That's the problem. Just a second to go onto Twitter here and see where we're at. Let's go this way. We're communicating right. Okay. Okay. Anyway, we'll come back to that. Right. Welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics and chat. I'm Mark Devlin, the host here, and here tonight with David Griffiths. Our aim at the Majority is a better Scotland, a thriving Scotland that is free from toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. Huge thanks to United Against Separation Facebook pages from where many of you are watching tonight.
And remember, sharing is caring. The number one thing you can do is to like the show on YouTube. And even if you don't subscribe, drop a like. And of course, if you can subscribe, please do so. All helps to increase the reach of the show at the click of a button.
Right, okay, very good. All right, so as usual, it says in this script, Mary's going to be doing the comments, but she's not. We've got the Grumpy Git doing those, and actually mainly me at the moment, but I think we'll eventually get this working. So don't panic. We will be a bit scattered rained for a bit, but then we will settle down, of course. The big news here is, let's see, don't panic, Mark is in control. Having issues with Wi-Fi, says. All right, well, okay. Right, I'll put some on there. Does she pay your socks for them when they come out of the washing machine? I just clicked that. I didn't actually read that before. That shows you, doesn't it? Actually, no, I actually paired them this week. Wonderful. The only time ever, surprisingly. Well, if you get a camera in our house, this is a very strange question to ask. Let's actually talk about. Oh, that's a good one. Can the Majority get USAID funding? Well, if only. That'd be great. We'd be sitting here in a golden chair. That's what we'd be doing. Anyway, right. So we'll try our best to muddle through. Anyway, this week's big news is the Scottish budget, which was passed yesterday. We'll talk about the contents in a moment. First, let's talk about the path to this nonsense. The minority SNP administration spending plans were supported by the Greens, Liberal Democrats and ALBA. while Labour MSPs abstained from the stage 3 ballot. There had been a lot of discussion last year about how the SNP would get this budget through after Hamza fired the Greens and then the SNP became a minority administration. But of course, I think it was fair to say at the time that we would all know that the Greens would always vote with the SNP anyway, because they want to keep getting their bike lanes funded. Right. Anyway, then Labour decided they were going to abstain, most likely because they knew it was going to pass anyway, and because they really didn't want to get thrown into election, considering how awful the Starmer administration has been so far. Now, David, do you think it would have been better if the budget had failed and there had been a Scottish election?
Well, at the time, as recently as Christmas, I was saying, an immediate election would be terrific, be better for all of us. But as you referenced there, right now, polls are showing this week SNP on 35%, and some even higher, and every other pro-UK party is at or below 20%. So we're rapidly getting back to the old days, it seems, when the SNP wins elections on a fraction of the vote, while particularly Labour and the Conservatives squabble over second place like two bald men fighting for use of the hairdryer, And of course now it's even worse that we've got Reform in the mix, which makes it three parties on or about 20%. So it's enormously frustrating because we've got clearly the numbers on the side of the pro-UK majority, but more and more it's looking like that's not going to be enough because there's just so much squabbling. And so anyway, this early on in the Labour UK governance first term, probably their only term, the way things are going, and with polls showing a Labour horror story getting worse every week, yes, I'd have to say I'm quite relieved there was no election, because if there had been an election immediately in 4 weeks or something, it's very difficult to see how the pro-UK side could start coalescing around any kind of message, and I just think it would have been very unfortunate, so I'm quite relieved.
In a wider sense, do you think that the Labour can recover the situation in the UK before this Holyrood election?
Well, I think they're trying very hard. I think Sarwar is really engaged in a charm offensive right now. He's on pretty much every media outlet. He was on Sunday show. He was in Scotland tonight. He's meeting some people tomorrow, I know. And so he's trying for sure. But I think it's going to be difficult. I've been of this opinion that Starmer has, if you like, front-loaded all the bad news in order to increase the chances of that stuff being forgotten and maybe some recovery being seen by the time of the next Westminster election, which is 4.5 years' time. And what he's maybe overlooked is the fact there's an incredibly important election in Holyrood in just over a year. And how on earth does he think that the start he's made is going to resonate with voters in Scotland? It's really not good at all. So
it's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? I mean, I don't know about front loading. Why should you front load bad news? I mean, just go out of the gate with good news, and then people are like more likely to, if you give them some bad news about, give us some good stuff to begin with. Yeah.
Right, it's true. I mean, that's certainly the more traditional way of looking at things. I mean, I think I've said this before on the show, the only prime ministerial reign with which I can equate this is Thatcher, who came in 79 and straight away made it clear that the money supply was going to be tightened and the nationalised industries were going to be, if they were loss-making, they weren't going to be kept going, and the strikes were going to be if you like, almost outlawed, and almost immediately 3 million people suddenly were out of work. And that's the only time I can remember such a load of bad news early on in any premiership. Usually, like you say, they're looking for good news. But maybe, I don't know, maybe he was thinking, well, he kept talking about this, was it a 22 billion black hole? He kept talking about that. He kept talking about stuff like the WASPy women. He said, no, we can't do that. And the winter fuel allowances, that we can't do that either. And these were things that he indicated, in fact, said in the past that he would support and would help to resolve. So to do that so early, it's almost incalculable why he would choose to do that, unless he's got some motive. And you end up having to second guess why they're doing it. Like, I've got a Labour activist friend who said to me, what he might be doing is trying to ensure that the SNP wins the Holyrood election to, if you like, emasculate them, because Labour, the SNP is a lot less effective in government than it is maybe carping from the sidelines. So could that be part of his big plan? Well, anything, it's hard to say, but Labour are going to have to do something to turn this round, because they're certainly not before May next year, because they won't win. And if they're, as things stand, and if Sarwar loses to Swinney of all people, he won't stay in the job. There's no way he can't do. So really, it's serious. Could not be more serious for them.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, I think generally politicians don't really want to put any bad news out, right? And just want to be like, and if events happen to them, then they'll say, "Excuse me, I've got to even get my microphone on probably." And then if events happen to them, then of course they'll make whatever excuses they can.
Yep.
But we're sitting in a situation here where they're basically just putting out bad news deliberately. It's a very strange one. Big thank you to CT99 for this year for his £10 super chat. I've long suspected Mary's the brains behind this operation. Really? Okay. But thanks for the £10 anyway. Very happy for that. Right. Some people say parties should be able to rule for more than 3 terms, but if people vote for them, what can you do about that? Now, let's talk about the Liberal Democrats. Why did they support the budget? Alex Cole-Hamilton, the leader, claims he got funding for a host of small projects, and also that he got a commitment that there would be no spending on independence in the budget. And I'm going to try and find the thing here. I'm trying to do 10 different things at once here, but yes, that's it. So that's there. SNP government independent spending is axed. It's quite a optimistic headline there. Now, this was from 20th of January this year, and a much touted win for the Liberal Democrats was saying that they would. He would a commitment there would be no spending on independence in the budget. He said, "This has been secured. There is no budget for independence. It's the first time in this parliament that nothing will be spent on independence. There's no more independence papers, no independence ministry." That was a red line for us. Somewhat echoes of Neville Chamberlain there, waving his wee bit of paper. But at her own media briefing, Robinson framed the issue differently to Cole-Hamilton. She said, "There is no dedicated budget for independence spend. It's part of the work of the government's constitution unit, which of course has access to millions, hundreds of millions. And she refused to rule out the constitution working on independence in the next budget year." What do you think of that, David?
It's just pitifully weak stuff, isn't it? I mean, Cole-Hamilton just looks like an absolute sap, a real dupe. And this also just looks like word manipulation by both of them, really. Cole-Hamilton, should never have believed such an undertaking would be taken on by the nationalists of all people. It's just classic fox helping the scorpion over the river, and the scorpion stings him. And after he says, "Of course I won't sting you," and he stings him. And he said, "What'd you do that for? We're both going to drown now." And the scorpion says, "Well, that's what I do. I'm a scorpion." And it's the same thing here. Why did I tell you no money will be spent on independence and then say that it's going to be? Well, that's what I do. I'm a nationalist. I lie. That's what I do. So how did he not see this coming? We all did. So it is extraordinarily poor judgment by Cole-Hamilton, I would say. So no, not
the
good.
question I have though with all this type of thing is how does working with the SNP advance Liberal Democrats? But how does it make more people vote for Liberal Democrats? Now we know that in the SNP everything they do is aimed at getting more support for independence, right? But how does this kind of thing help Alex Cole-Hamilton get more votes?
Well, it fundamentally does not, does it? Because I mean, I talk often about the Liberal Democrat vote in Scotland. It's very focused. It's focused on certain constituencies. They don't feature in regional lists at all. They just don't. Probably because they win in quite a lot of regions, if you like, and the vote is there by handicapped. And elsewhere, they're just swept along. People don't vote Lib Dem on the list. So they all they can do is focus on their core constituencies. And with the Alpert tactic of voting last year, they went up from 4 to 6. They've got a real chance of getting 7 next year. Not if Cole-Hamilton does this, though, because remember, it's the SNP who's in second place. So the SNP is in second place in every constituency in Holyrood and Westminster, which they don't currently hold. They're in second in all of them. And this is why it's very, very dangerous to be allying themselves with the SNP in these seats, because if people want an ersatz SNP, they'll just vote SNP instead.
Of course, yes, that's right.
It doesn't. And I can understand why people are saying, look, I really can't vote Lib Dem again because let's not forget, we've done it for Beth or whatever it was he said, and he couldn't really say what a woman is. I'm not.
And the Tadgergate.
Exactly, all that complete nonsense. Exactly right. I'm not. What was it? I'm not empowered to say whether this guy with a fully grown meat and two veg is a man. Well, I can give you a little hint there, Alex, to be honest with you. But anyway, what doesn't help, I guess, is we've got people like both Thomas Kerr and Stephen Kerr of Reform, and now the Conservatives and the Conservatives have taken to Twitter sneering at Cohampton Lakeline, saying, "Listen, I hope you voters are going to remember this." And I'm thinking, hang on, guys, there's no need for you to jump in and do all that stuff, particularly when you bear in mind that if the Lib Dems lose the seat, the SNP will win it. So what's the point in that? I don't see that at all. There are certainly no marginal Liberal, Democrat, Conservative seats in Scotland. There are no marginal seats in Scotland that don't.
Yeah, I noticed your comment on that. I thought it was yeah.
It's true. I mean, we don't need Stephen Kerr dishing the dirt on the Lib Dems. That's not going to help the Conservatives one little bit. It might help them to get second place in a couple of seats, but can we just stop this self-interest, please? Where there's a pro-UK seat held by, the constituency rather held by a pro-UK party, wouldn't it make sense for the Conservatives just to leave it and focus on attacking the SNP, who are the government, let's not forget, and the Labour Party is the UK government? Why in the name of God is the Conservative Party and Reform going to go with the Lib Dems? Other than that's just cheap shot politics. Very, very disappointing to me. Don't like it at all.
No, yes, it's a bit weird. Now, I think there is actually a kind of wider point in this, which is if the independence question was taken off the agenda, then would there really be a problem with parties working with each other to get the best for the constituencies? I mean, wasn't the Parliament set up that way so that would happen? The idea would be that, they would hash it out amongst one another, and then you would get to some kind of budget. Now, that's kind of the case. The problem with that at the moment, though, is that, as I said earlier, everything the SNP does is geared towards breaking up the UK. So it does helping them help by default helps that issue. Now, if the SNP were to say, "Look, we've abandoned, independence," then maybe we could do that. Right? Maybe it might be okay to do these type of things, form coalitions, whatever. But then again, what's the point? I'm not wanting to, bang the drum again, but surely the budget could be worked out by the heads of local authorities just going to Westminster and having a big series of meetings about that. Surely that would be a lot better.
Well, I couldn't agree more, to be honest. I think what we saw from, if you like, Humza's folly when he, at the last minute, decided he was going to unilaterally announce a council tax freeze to the horror and chagrin of all of the councils in Scotland. That just shows you how absurd it is to set a Holyrood budget without first at least having some collaborative discussion with councils, because how can you do it? It's ludicrous. So when you're making decisions like that, and so yeah, you're right, it would be better if there was some involvement at that level, I would say, for certain. But yeah, I mean, the whole premise of Holyrood was so that, let's not forget, the big parties were in constituency seats, and the idea of the list is so that some element of proportional representation is used so that parties which wouldn't have enough votes to win a seat can get in to Parliament. And what's happened instead, first Labour was dominant, now the SNP has been utterly dominant, which means that parties like the Conservatives and particularly Labour are utterly dependent on the list to get any kind of representation at all. In the last Parliament, the Conservatives won, I think it was 5 constituency seats, and Labour won 2. So the rest of their MPs, and they've got about 20 to 30 each, the bulk of their MPs are list MSPs, and that's completely in contravention of what the Holyrood election system was set up to do. It was set up so that small parties would get their people in now, but it's been completely abused and bastardized, if you want to use that term, so that the big parties are critically dependent on it because they're not capable of winning constituency seats, and it's just pathetic, really.
Well, but I mean, it's the same. I mean, I don't know as well. And of course, the other part of it too is 59 seats. MPs that do, what are they doing?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Yep.
I mean, that's the thing. You could have them talking with the local authorities or the constituencies or whatever. It's just a mess. It's just they've got MPs who don't do anything. You've got MSPs who've got too much power, and local authorities that are getting cash taken away from all the time. Let's talk a little bit about the budget itself. Wasn't that much going on in it. I don't think if you can maybe mention some things. But most of it was about, of course, tax. Most of the bans remain static, but it turns out most people will pay a higher rate of tax due to fiscal drag, which is what happens when the bans are not released not raised, in line with pay increases, meaning that people are dragged into higher tax brackets. Taxpayers earning £30,300 will pay less income tax in Scotland than they would if they worked elsewhere, but this only amounts to £28 a year. Huge saving there. But those earning £50,000 will pay about £1,500 more per year in Scotland than they would in the rest of the UK. So basically, the most productive Scots have to pay more tax for the privilege of a SNP government that hates them. Right. True. Now, David, looking at the United States where you were just a moment ago, do you think ultimately the time of spend and tax is over? Or will the Doge experiment, Elon Musk's attempt to cut government spending, fail? Because the reason I'm asking this is because what happens in America is surely going to happen here, is it? Well, that's another part of the question, isn't it?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, we look at America normally to see what trends we will follow. That is normally the way of it. But what have we got here? We've got the US giving the impression that days of tax to spend are indeed over. Tax cuts are us, says Trump and Vance, which makes Musk's task to save, $1 trillion from the deficit an awful lot harder if you're going to be doing that against the backdrop of tax cuts. So how will it pan out? Difficult to say. I mean, what you could, this touches on the point you made earlier. What does Trump do when he comes in? Immediately announces good news. That's what he does. That's what populist presidents or leaders do. Unlike Starmer, who stands there all robotic and delivers all this terrible news in such an unfeeling manner. So weird. But what it could be, of course, if this is just a populist move, then we know what Trump's like. And this is a criticism I heard most often about Trump from Americans, was that he will just shaft people. He'll change his mind and he'll say, okay, I know we had this agreement, but I'm pulling out of it without any by your leave, if you like, and he'll just really make life very difficult for people in so doing. So he's either making life difficult for Musk doing this, or else he's quietly going to drop it in time and just say, okay, that was a good idea, but that's never mind.
Well, I mean, the American public are behind him. They're certainly with this. I think it's like 70% approve of this kind of cost cutting. And I think if you ran a poll like that in Scotland or even in the UK, you would similarly get something like that. As Paul Halford said, breathing will be taxed in Scotland, and Karen says, don't give them ideas, Paul. One of our favourite lines as well. Right, okay, now I talked about this before, tax harmonisation. Why on earth did they think this was a good idea to have different tax rates in different parts of the country for income tax? It's just going to cause big troubles. There's all this trouble now with national insurance contributions and so on. I've said from the beginning, I think it was Gordon Brown who promoted the idea that Scotland should have different income tax rates to the rest of the UK. It would be a disaster. What did he think was going to happen? What did he think? Anyone could see that it would lead to the Scottish government spending more and then trying to tax people for their ineptitude. Or their largesse, let's say, put it that way. Exactly what's happening here. Do you think removing that ability, David, the ability to raise taxes would improve business confidence?
Well, I think it would improve. It would help it, certainly. I think the number one thing that would improve business confidence in Scotland is a cast iron guarantee that we're not going to have any more discussion about Scotland separating from the rest of the UK and potentially having its own currency, because nothing, I can tell you, zero, will upset and concern businesses more than the idea that you might be transacting in a new currency shortly. I mean, seriously. Are you mad? Who do you think is going to be attracted for long-term investment in a country where you don't even know what the currency is going to be in 5 or 10 years' time if you listen to the ruling party? So now that would do it. But yeah, standardising tax rates. Yeah, I mean, remember the SNP doing that. Brown probably said what he said because he thought, well, Labour will be in charge and we can maybe use this to our advantage. Little did he know Labour would be swept out along with him from Westminster, and that the SNP would come in. And of course, the SNP is all about government by headline. So you've got, okay, they can now say, well, of course, we pay, in Scotland, you pay the lowest tax rates. So many people in Scotland pay less tax than anywhere else in the UK. And then when they're challenged, what about the people who pay more? Well, of course, we have progressive tax. So those of us who have the broadest shoulders can afford to pay a little bit more. So it's just constantly soundbite wins for them. So that's why they're doing it. Yes, I would love to see tax rates standardised. The fact that you can earn 50,000 and pay, £120 or more a month more in income tax.
It's quite a lot. I mean, it really is a lot.
Absolutely. You know, it's like people have got enough strains on or draws on their income these days. But of course, they would say this, and people say, well, of course, you get free prescriptions for that, and you get free tuition. Yeah, right, so many people on £50,000 need free prescriptions. It's nonsense. It really is. It's typical SNP management by this absurd way of just getting headlines. That's all it is. So yeah, yes, I would love it if somebody in the UK stepped in and just stopped all this nonsense, because different tax rates for people across England and Scotland, I cannot see a single reason why you'd want to do that at all.
No, it really is crazy. It says here we wouldn't put these morons in charge for tuck shop, never mind a £63 billion budget. And I think so. We'll just leave the discussion of this budget here. We're going to come back in a few seconds. We're going to talk about some fake news that was doing the rounds. Two pieces of fake news that were doing the rounds. We'll see you back in a second. Let's figure out how to do this, because more buttons than normal to push. No, it's not working either. All right. That's not a big rest. But anyway, and my mouse isn't working. But anyway, we'll get there in the end. Fake news. Right. Okay. I want to talk about fake news that came out yesterday, I think it was. It was Anna Sauer criticising Billy Connolly. I mean, shocking, isn't it?
Yep.
How could that possibly be? How could anyone criticise Billy Connolly?
Yep.
He said, apparently, that if we go to the thing here, Star Wars says Billy Connolly is outdated, vulgar, and offensive. What? How dare he slight our national treasure, the big gun himself? What a scandal. Or was it really? Now, putting about your side your feelings for Star Wars, let's look at this a little bit more dispassionately. A Google search. I mean, first thing I did was a Google search. I had a look, and I said, well, it's not appearing anywhere. And then surely it would have been reported in multiple publications, but not a single one. Then look at the text. If you look at this bottom section there, it says the Labour leader said he would end the culture of vulgarness that gives Scotland a bad reputation. Vulgarness? Vulgar? What kind of word is that? And surely a newspaper would not publish such a thing. Of course, this was fake news. I tracked down the guy on Twitter who posted it, and he actually apologised. He'd lifted it off of Facebook, but there the trail went cold. We couldn't find out who had done it, unfortunately, who had made this fake screenshot. But look how cynical this idea is. This idea. Mark, what's this, Mark? You do on a computer? Because I don't. I'm a genius at computers. Right. Don't worry, I'll be replaced soon by AI. That's what's happening. Right. Okay. Anyway. But look at this terrible thing. Cynical, it basically uses someone who's unimpeachable. People in general, I would say most Scots have a very strongly heartfelt opinion for Billy Connolly. And to use that as a way to attack a politician, I think really is kind of sick. But Labour tried to make some kind of joke out of it. They said, this kind of weird nationalist disinformation is as welcome as a fart in a spacesuit, which references, of course, one of Billy's most famous jokes. But I think the damage was already done. I mean, I looked, even under my post, it said it was fake news. People said nationalists were like, well, it doesn't matter. They said, if some of the comments were, if he didn't say it, he probably thinks it. And that's not true, actually. There's a whole video of him, of Sarwar praising Billy Connolly. And, let's hope the mud sticks. Or, remember that Unionists in Scotland and England use lies and deception every single day against Scotland. It's just a bit depressing, really. David, so what do you think?
Well, I have to say, when I heard this story, I at the same time about as the time you saw it, I thought, that can't be. Why would he ever go at Billy Connolly? And then I thought, well, so he's upset at someone who's a bit foul-mouthed, who's a comedian, tells vulgar jokes, and sets a bad example. Do you know, I can think of another Scottish comedian I'd finger for all those traits a lot sooner than Billy Connolly, and that is, of course, Janie Godley. But
maybe some inappropriate wording there.
Quite, and quite finger, yeah. God, sorry about that, guys. What an image. Jesus. Anyway, but no, I mean, that's the thing. If you're going to have a go at any comedian in Scotland, surely it would be one who's just disgraced herself constantly and made racist comments and said what we know she said about Donald Trump. So it did strike me as being a bit unlikely. But anyway, I'm glad that he didn't do it. But, in all seriousness, this is clearly a very transparent nationalist attempt to smear Sarwar using a totally fake story. And it does show, though, that the SNP is still very wary of Sarwar and that they continue to fear a resurgent Scottish Labour above everything else. And that, I think, is why you're seeing such opprobrium being heaped on Sarwar and Labour right now, particularly in the press. The press is using any mechanisms it can to try and do Labour down. A friend said to me the other day that he heard Starmer giving a speech in which he pledged support for Grangemouth and a lot of money, and afterwards all they talked about was Ukraine. They didn't talk about that at all in Scotland, and he thought this is clearly if you like, this is the news outlets are trying to build this narrative that Labour can't be trusted, Labour's on the slide and the SNP's coming back. And that's what Scottish media outlets are clearly doing, is what it looks like to me. And I think this is all part of it. I'll come on to talk a little bit later about reform and where I think that's all going in terms of SNP running against them. But at the moment, I think this still shows that the SNP is looking over its shoulder to make sure Labour's well behind them. That's how it seems anyway.
Yeah, it's a bit, as I say, it's a bit depressing, really, because it's depressing that people, you're so tribal that they just can't actually look at the factual information.
True.
I think that's the thing about it. You see these lies and misinformation so often, just everywhere. And of course, we try our best to counter them. And some people mentioned we're trying to make the majority truth about it. But these type of things, it's just there's so much misinformation, so much programming that people that Scots have been subjected to, that is just really false. And a lot of it comes down to Alex Salmond. I think he's to blame with this. The country, I think, in general, needs a deprogramming from these kind of ideas. The basic one is, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago, the basic one is, in what country does a minority of separatists get to break up the entire country? It's just not. That's the first point.
Yep.
Right. Alex Salmond broke through that and said, it's possible, and actually managed to convince Cameron that was possible. No, but no, it's not going to happen again. Just move on. That's the thing. Now, let's talk about the second piece of fake news. Of course, now, I was wondering if we were back in 1973, when the National, the only which prides itself as being the only Scottish newspaper that supports the breakup of the UK, released a poster campaign. Laura Webster, the Nationalist editor over there, says, spotted in Glasgow this morning. These will be appearing all over Scotland this week as we investigate Scotland's energy scandal. Now, if you can't read that, it says, Westminster stole Scotland's oil wealth. Now we have some of the highest energy bills in Europe. Okay, wait a minute. It's our oil. It was stolen. Well, are we really back then? We can remember that in the old days. They used to say it's our oil, and now it's changed, of course, to our wind, to our whatever it is, water, all these type of things as well. Now, of course, this is a trope of greedy nationals. This is important. It's greed, just greed. Let's say we've got a shared land, and then your neighbour who's sharing land says, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to build a wall here, keep this bit, take all the oil, and make myself rich." That's basically their whole argument.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, what kind of thing is that? If that actually happened to you in real life, you'd be raging.
Quite.
And instead, so they're just not nice people. Anyway, of course, it's a lie.
Yep.
Basically, in the base level, it's a lie. Westminster didn't steal Scotland's oil or oil wealth even, because it was never Scotland's oil, it was the UK's oil. This is the basic thing here.
Yeah.
Now, I took upon myself to complain to the Advertising Standards Authority, because while they're allowed to put out political statements, that is not a political statement. That is a blatant lie. Yeah. And so I wrote that to them, the Advertising Standards Authority, this is blatantly false. North Sea oil does not and never has belonged to Scotland. It belongs to the entire UK, and it's taxed by the UK government for the benefit of UK citizens.
Yes.
Because Scotland is not an independent country, has no intrinsic right to oil revenues. It's so desperate, David. You think, why are they persist with this?
It's true. I can remember clearly 1973, you would see stickers in windows. It's our oil. It's Scotland's oil. You saw that all the time. Just when the first drops of the stuff were starting to come ashore, and of course, some people who maybe were easily led thought, yeah, actually, that's true. It is ours. Of course, it's not. Nothing is solely Scotland's. We know that. The oil belongs to the UK, as you say. It's mined by private US companies. And this is just proof yet again that the premise of nationalism, like you say, is fundamentally greed, backed with a liberal sprinkling of casual racism. You saw that sign saying England out of Scotland. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Oh, that was another one this week as well.
Indeed. So all this proves is that the nationalists have nothing new to offer, whatever, except rehashing old slogans from literally 50 years ago. And if that's the case,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
somebody just said they're talking about the Macron report as well, which was written in, 1974? I mean, guys, are you being serious here? And now, of course, they're talking about the Bill of Rights or the Claim of Rights, whatever it's called. I mean, guys, stop. Serious. Next we'll be talking about the Declaration of Arbroath. You know,
well, they always do talk about that as well. But here's the other part, of course, is that they say, well, now we have some of the highest energy bills in Europe. Well, you might not have the highest energy bills in Europe if you had let oil and gas exploration go on,
right.
and if you didn't hate nuclear power.
Quite.
I mean, this is you had the Greens in power. I mean, what kind of messed up nonsense is this? Yep. It's like, they stole our oil, but now we don't want the oil.
Yeah.
So and it was a bad thing all along. I mean,
they've got the cheek to talk about the demise of Grangemouth, which is a place where they refined oil. They were already saying, "Hang on, we got to stop the extraction of pollutant fossil fuels, but we want to keep Grangemouth going." And they come up with this utter nonsense that they always talk about the just transition. I don't know if you saw that thing about Joe Biden talking to who was he talking to? Postman or something, and he said you're going to have to learn how to do coding. Maybe that's the future for you, or miners or something. Are these people insane? Seriously, it's like when they were talking about closing down a shipyard or whatever it was, an engineering place over in the west of Scotland about 10 years ago, and they said, okay, what we'll do is we'll train you up to do new jobs. It was nuclear. I think it was the nuclear facility, and the SNP were saying, oh, it's dead easy. What we'll do is we'll just train you to do other things. And a union spokesperson said, this is just total infantile rubbish. You might as well offer them jobs in Brigadoon because they don't exist. And he's right. You can't just say, well, I know you guys refine oil, but why don't you do this with wind? I mean, right, okay, guys, that's brilliant. Okay, half the time, the wind doesn't blow enough, and the other half it blows too much. And so please, can we stop this idiocy? But apparently not.
No, I think this is a very good comment by MK. Very worrying. I mean, that's what, it's just, that is the thing. It's just not utter nonsense. It's just, I mean, put this such blatant Anglophobia out in public and being proud of it.
Yeah, quite.
As well. Like, oh yeah, these people are stealing from us. I mean, she stood up, right, and stood up in the street and said that, I think in a crowd of people, a lot of people would just be like, what the hell are you talking about? You're a loony.
It's true.
An utter loony.
You do hear this stuff. You hear this rhetoric. I mean, where I live, you hear this in bars. We're being ripped off. We're the only country who ever got worse. Circle only got poorer and all this nonsense. People do swallow this verbatim. They really do. Maybe people are not particularly, maybe politically educated or literate. They will hear these lines and they will stick with them, and that's why they do it.
That's what I was saying. That it's like we need to be deprogrammed from this nonsense, because it really is nonsense. It's just it's mind virus or something like that. It's got into people's minds and been promoted by people like, as I said, Sam and of course the current cabal who are in and you just say no. Yep. The world doesn't work the way your delusion. It doesn't. The world isn't here to suit your delusions. Quite. The world is a different thing from that. It's reality, and I mean they can live in delusion, but I mean ultimately their delusions will fail them anyway, and they have been failing them anyway. Right? Okay, that was enough about fake news. Next one up, we're going to talk about the battle for the control of the SNP. But before that, I realised I missed out a bit, which is the Majority Truth Bot. Now, thanks to a very special donor who put in a large donation last week. We have completed the funding, or I should say you have completed the funding of the Majority Truth Bot. Big thanks to us. Hey, great, thank you. So that's great, and started working on that already. However, we do need monthly funds to run the bot. We have to pay to make work on Twitter, it costs £160. £160 a month. So we're looking for monthly donations. That's 16 people at £10 a month, or 32 at £5 a month. Mary would be very proud of me for doing those calculations in my head. Anyway, but if you can donate, please do so. You can support the show as well. You can go to our website. Please, you can leave a super thanks like CR99 did already. That's great. Every donation, large or small, is very much appreciated. And we do use it for stuff. We use it for the Truth Bot and for doing stuff. It takes time and effort to do a lot of the things we do. Now, I did notice Alan Jack also said that he had put in to the advertising standards as well. There we go. Yes, there's a comment there. I sent a complaint myself to the ASA, right? And that is part of it. What we need to do. When we see stuff like this, we see lies. We need to, take action and do that. Right. Anyway, back in a second with David. All right. This is the tricky bit. Right. Right, David, there you go.
Here I go. Just before I launch into my little diatribe, can I just point out one of the comments said that Nigel Benn brought the oil at North Shirley Shore. Nigel Benn's a boxer. I think you find it was Tony Benn, but yeah, I get the point you're making there. But it's the wrong Christian name there. Anyway, just a slight little point. Anyway, sorry guys. Right, so tonight I thought I would explore the growing three-way split, a little bit at the end of a Clint Eastwood movie, in the SNP leadership. Now, as we know, the SNP has several leaders and deputy leaders. Let's go through them all, shall we? What fun we'll have. So we have Swinney, who is a party leader, and Swinney is also the First Minister. We then have Keith, say it with Flowers Brown, who is the depute, if you please, not deputy, but depute SNP leader in Holyrood. And of course, in addition, we have Kate, no sex before marriage, please, Forbes, who's the Deputy First Minister, also in Holyrood. Now in Westminster, those japesters down there, we have Stephen, the hardest man in the Commons, Flynn, who's the party's Westminster leader, and we have as his deputy, Pete Slippers Wishart. Now, that's a lot of leaders and a lot of deputies, guys, I think you'll agree.
Too many cooks.
Indeed. Among these 6 people, there are varying degrees of relevance and importance. Brown, of course, is a complete non-entity. He's nothing more than an empty suit with an open account at Interflora. That's all he is. Wishart...
Oh, yeah, that's good. I didn't see that in the script.
I must say that with all due respect. And then, of course, you have Wishart, who is a tired has-been, whose career peaked when he was the...
Is he not retired yet?
Well, he might as well be. He was the keyboard player.
Would anyone notice the difference?
Would anyone notice? Indeed, all he does is splutter and talk a load of absolute nonsense. All he's ever been good at doing is tinkling the ivories for Runrig, who are dreadful anyway. So, yeah, that's all he is. So he should have retired. He should have been kicked out last year, but, of course, the Conservatives couldn't get enough votes to beat him. So he's a nothing also. Forbes has more of a presence, as we know, and it looks increasingly more and more that she senses that her time is coming. And Flynn, as we all know, is on open manoeuvres trying to become leader and First Minister. We heard that from Audrey Nicholl last week, where he'd said to her on the phone, I'm going places and I've got to be in Holyrood and all this. He's making it absolutely clear he wants the job. And that just leaves honest, safe and Swinney. So he's clearly looking over his shoulder both ways. He's looking at Forbes on one side and Flynn on the other side, and he knows he wants his job. He equally knows both have more appeal to party members than he does. So what's his strategy been thus far, Swinney? Well, unbelievably, he's chosen to reaffirm his devotion to his predecessor, two-back, that is, and former leader Nicola Sturgeon. Swinney talks and acts as if Nicola Sturgeon is still hissing in his ear from the seat beside him on the front bench. If you'd proof of this, just look at last week's interviews where he was asked about trans women using single-sex spaces. So he tried to channel Sturgeon in her famous attempt to argue with Peter Smith that there are actually 3 genders, male, female, and rapist. But she forgot that particular interview pretty much finished Sturgeon's career. So now we've got rumours in Holyrood just last week, they were actually printed, that Swinney will not back down in his defiant support for the Gender Recognition Reform Bill while Nicola Sturgeon is still in Holyrood. So, it reminds me of the Godfather, Michael Corleone, keeping Vito's vow and waiting until his father died before he broke the peace and killed all the heads of the other 5 families. But what this means, of course, guys, is Scottish Government policy is currently being set by a pitifully weak First Minister who's afraid to make his ex-boss angry. That's what is happening in Holyrood right now. It's pathetic. There might as well be a cardboard cutout of Sturgeon sitting in the front bench instead of Swinney, because all he's doing is Sturgeon's bidding. It is just laughable. What do you have you noticed?
Yes, no, I mean, certainly if someone put a cardboard cutout, you wouldn't notice the difference, would you? I mean, really, yes. Anyway, what have I supposed to be noticed? Tensions? No, actually, I haven't noticed tensions among. Of course, we do know the tension between Stephen Flynn wants to come back, all costs, trample on whoever is in his way to get up the greasy pole. I'm mixing metaphors, I think. Anyway, up the top of that pole. To be that great position of First Minister of Scotland. It's like what they'll say, you know, the competition is so intense because the rewards are so low, that type of thing. But I think that just, I mean, it's, as you mentioned earlier, it's like, you know, it's like bald men having a fight in a wig shop, something like that type of thing. You know, it's what's the result? What are they going for? Yeah. And this ghost of Sturgeon hanging around, Banquo's ghost, you know, scaring everybody. It's like, what's he to be scared of? What's she going to do? She's going to. Well, she doesn't even appear in the Parliament. She's going to write an article against you, whatever. Yeah. So what's she got on these people? I don't know. I think she's just got the. And half the Nationalists hate her, maybe even more than half the Nationalists hate her. Really? I mean, terrible.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Well, my suspicion, I think where all this is leading is that I think Swinney doesn't really have the stomach to keep doing a job at which he's clearly failing. I mean, you saw his interviews last week. He can't do it. He cannot argue a point. He can't debate a point at all. When he was asked if what people should do if they were upset about a male coming into or a biological male coming into a single-sex space, what should they do? And he said, "Well, the advice is clear. Okay, if it's that clear, tell us what it is." Well, I would refer them to the Act of 2008. Just rubbish, absolute rubbish, just dreadful. So what he's faced with is a deputy who is intellectual superior in every facet. Absolutely. We all saw Forbes last week vigorously defending women's right to single-sex spaces. She has this unapologetic anti-woke stance, and that effortlessly trumps his, Vicky Pollard routine when quizzed about this. Yeah, but shut up, and all that nonsense, which is all he says, really, frankly. And Flynn, of course, is a far more able and far more accomplished political schemer than Swinney ever could be. He's already seen off a far tougher political opponent, stroke leader than Swinney in Ian Blackford. Now, we know that Swinney's wife is in poor health. I think she has MS or something like that. I'm not speaking ill of the poor women here, but his wife is infirm. We know he was ready to step down until a year ago when Humza blew it, but I just can't see him remaining First Minister beyond next year. I think what he is working towards is taking the credit for steadying the ship before moving on and leaving it to the next generation of leaders and all that. And with that, off he'll go. The only question is, will he leave with the SNP about to begin a fifth term in office? And that, I think, is a question for another day to be discussed. But is it going to come a cropper just like Sturgeon did? Now, we had this today, I think it was, he's still tied to the mast of the trans women or women.
All the debate
very much so.
Going on at the moment.
He's doubling down there. You're absolutely right.
Given all the debate about this that's going on at the moment, is it your position that trans women are women?
Well, I've said, the answer I've given to that before is that that I accept that to be the case.
Right. Now, it just only takes a few seconds for a journalist to then do this.
That's not the point that we're dealing with here.
The question I'm asking.
Trans women are women, but in the prison context, there is no automatic right for a trans woman.
So there are contexts where a trans woman is not a woman?
No, there is circumstances in which a trans woman will be housed in the male prison estate.
Is there any context in which a woman born as a woman will be housed in the male estate?
Look, we're talking here about trans women.
And I'm now asking about women born as women.
I don't think there are circumstances there, but...
So it's different for trans women?
Well, yes, and I'm not...
So they're not equal?
That is not... There is a risk assessment process done for trans women that takes account of the nature of the crime. Clearly, significant concern arises out of sexual crime and whether it's appropriate for them to be in a female prison or a male prison.
Well. I mean, it's the same thing that all a journalist needs to do now is just say,
Exactly.
what about the prisons? Exactly
Yep.
the same thing.
Absolutely.
And he will, that killed.
Yep.
That was the first thing, the first dagger that killed Nicola Sturgeon's career.
Yes.
That there, because it was the first time anyone was able to make up. She couldn't answer the question.
Exactly.
And maybe that's to her. I suppose it's a two-way thing, isn't it? That because one part on one side, the press wasn't asking the questions as well, but also because she is quite skilled at not answering questions. But in that case, this is comedy gold. It is comedy gold, and that's the thing when they start laughing at you.
Yep. And that's what I said at the time. Exactly that. The one thing she can't stomach is ridicule. And that was the beginning of the end. And of course, shortly after that, she came out saying all these people who think they pretend they're cloaked in women's rights, they're really misogynist. They're also homophobic, and they're probably racist. Yeah, okay, that's great, Nikki. And that's what it did for her, no question. By that stage, she just said, "Oh, you're all wrong. You're all wrong. I know what I'm doing. You're all right. I'm not doing this anymore." And that's what it did for her. Seriously, that one interview was the tipping point. And after that, it was all downhill.
Yes, definitely was. And
let's not forget Hamza. Also, it was over gender recognition that he lost his job. Also, because he stood up to the Greens when they refused to accept the recommendations of the Cass Review, which is all about biological sex and the rights of women and stuff, and transgender, particularly children. They wouldn't have it, and he fired them. So that cost him his job also. And it looks like it'll be the hill upon which Swinney dies also. So, well, good luck to them. Let them all keep talking about this forever. And all of other leaders can keep standing down. Great, that suits me. Anyway, so but what's next, of course, is just before.
Well, just a second before we get there. Someone had said that the sound isn't working well. Can you just let us know in the comments if you can hear us or not? Now, I don't know what we're going to do if you can't hear us.
Yeah, good point.
Just take a few questions, shake a few cables, bash the back of the TV. That used to work.
Which is off and on again, yeah.
That's it. I can hear you fine, David. Yes, it's okay. All right, okay.
Good.
Very good.
By the way, can I just apologise to all the Run Rig fans I've upset? I'm so sorry, guys. My cousin and her husband are huge fans, believe it or not. But
I was away, so I never really heard. I've never heard a single song of theirs.
You'll have heard Rod Stewart, "The Rhythm of My Heart Beating."
Oh, is that one of their songs?
One of their songs, yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Anyway, so just to talk, just finish off talking about Swinney. He has, of course, come out fighting today. He's come out swinging against the far right because here's some of his quotes, guys. Today, storm clouds are gathering. We can all see them. It's time to draw a line in the sand against the politics of fear. Honestly, it's like Martin Luther King reborn, isn't it? Really?
Right.
It's going to take us to the promised land. Oh my God. Anyway,
yes.
This, I believe, is what SNP bigwigs are desperate to see happening. They want. What he's doing here is talking up reform, the threat of reform, because SNP bigwigs want to see an SNP versus reform shootout. That's what they want. They want this to happen in 2026 if possible, which isn't going to happen, but certainly in 2029 between the SNP led by whomever and Farage led reform. That would be the SNP's dream scenario. It would be just like in 72, Nixon's Watergate fixers sabotaged the chances of all the other Democratic leadership hopefuls so that Nixon would end up running against the unelectable and kind of weak George McGovern. And that's what happened in the end, and it was the biggest landslide of all time. So the SNP believes a shootout against reform would produce only one result, and that's a landslide win for them. And I think they're right, to be honest, because no party led by Nigel Farage will get a fair press in Scotland. Not a chance ever. It wouldn't happen. So this is why they're trying hard to damage Sarwar, because they fear Sarwar a lot more than they fear reform. But reform's a far more convenient bogeyman for them than Labour. Not, of course, that Labour needs any help messing up
Indeed.
very well themselves. But that, I think, is what is behind the latest Swinney outburst.
I think that the risk they run with that is that reform could certainly come up with a charismatic front leader in Scotland. That hasn't happened so far. They've been anonymous. But certainly someone could come up, a celebrity or something like that. Who knows? I don't know. But that's a possibility. So, I mean, events can happen.
Yeah.
I think but I think the thing here is just this idea that there was a thing earlier on It was on. Basically, they're saying they're trying to form a cross-party committee to stop the rise of the far right in Scotland. You're like, well, wait a minute, what is this far right? Because you want immigration controls. You don't want anyone just rocking up at the border and getting access to benefits and so on. Well, that's not far right. That's just common sense.
Absolutely.
A lot of people would agree with that. Okay, and you don't want transgender men in women's spaces.
Yep.
Oh, okay, then that seems to be common sense as well. So what's he arguing at? This imaginary far right. Yet all the time, of course, they say, "Oh, but we're against extremists." But all the time, it's like you're the extremists.
Exactly
you're
right.
Break up our country.
Right.
That's the most extreme proposition of all. You're in with Al Qaeda and in Iran and Russia. They also want to break up our country. That's the extreme. So it's just a deflect. As it says in that article, actually, it's a desperate deflection to cause mainstream Scotland to combat the rise of reform. But it's not even reform. It's just the idea that anything that they do is perfect. And it's, with the best motivation in the world. And anything that anyone who opposes them do is basically like Hitler.
That's absolutely right. That's it. That was Sturgeon's outburst I referenced a moment ago. That's exactly what that was like. You're all fascists. You're all bigots. I'm the one who's got this right. I'm the one with the vision. You're all wrong. Oh, yeah. Right. Okay, guys. That's great. Whatever. Let's have a debate on those terms. Fantastic. But that's just ludicrous. So, yeah, you're quite right.
Oh, thank you.
There you go. Hey, there you go. We've reached. This is wonderful.
Right, that's it. Right, okay, well, Mary's not going to be doing a section because you're not here tonight, so we shall move on. Things you can do right now to support the show. You can buy a T-shirt or a mug. And here, look, well, there it is. Fantastic. And that comfy. Good, I like this T-shirt. Very nice. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube, or you can give us a like. We love the likes. So if you've not liked the show, just like it right now. Subscribing's even better. But if you can't force yourself to hit that subscribe button, then you could maybe just hit the like button instead. And you can tell your friends about us, and you can do all of the above, which makes us feel extremely happy and fulfilled, underlined exclamation mark. Coming up, it's the moment you've all been waiting for, the highlight of the week. It is Zoomer of the Week.
Zoom.
Oh, that's very good. Mary usually does a wee yay, but yours
Yes, it does, yeah.
That's very good. I'm impressed. You're keeping the show on the road. You sound like Daleks.
Daleks, oh dear. Exterminate.
Well, that is a problem. Is it doing it's not to do with us.
Goodness.
That's unfortunate. Oh, Zoomers. Yay, Zoomers. Right.
This is us just doing our Star Wars and Rachel Reeves impersonations. That's all.
Yes. Sorry about that, Alan. Well, we can only muddle on and see what we do. Hopefully the sound will improve. It's usually to do with bandwidth issues or something. Anyway, yes, we do have 3 candidates because I did another one in. Anyway, right, Mary wins. And Mary is going to win this one, I can tell you right now. My Zoomer of the week this week is Craig Murray. Now, some of you will know Craig already. Let me get some pictures up here. For some reason, the UK government made him an ambassador to Uzbekistan. I was supposed to show you where that is in the map. It's somewhere. I don't even know where it is. Nobody really knows where it is. Over there somewhere. Anyway, but that seems like a failure of vetting to me. I mean, surely the first question should be, do you want to break up the UK? Do you want to promote the aims of the UK overseas? No, I want to break up. Oh, okay, right. Well, maybe you shouldn't get the ambassadorial position in that case. Now, during the Salmon trial, many people will know this as well, that Craig took on the role of court reporter, and which led to him being put in prison for 8 months for contempt of court because he revealed enough information that readers could piece together who the plaintiffs were, the so-called jigsaw identification. Anyway, what's this here? I'm going to put some comments up in the meantime. David, your Scots Army. David, there you go. Is a Zoomer because of his run rig comments.
Oh, guys, that's so cruel. Sorry, Catherine.
Yes. Okay. And another Mary wins. Right. Okay. Now, most recently, Craig was stopped when he came back to UK from a conference in Iceland for saying that he supported every act of armed resistance by Hamas and Hezbollah. If that is a crime, he said, send me back to jail. Well, they should have actually sent him back to jail because declaring support for Hamas, a proscribed terrorist organisation, is
Right.
illegal
Yeah.
in the UK. Here he is. There he is. There. His phone was taken, and he looked through it, but didn't find anything else, or at least not that we know of. Anyway, now yesterday, Craig had something on his mind. It's a fear so terrible that it almost can't be put into words. What if England attacked Scotland? Now, you or I may not think about these things, but this is what keeps Craig awake at night. Imagining hordes of soldiers and tanks waving St George's crosses coming across the border, shouting, "We won in 1966," and doing all kinds of Englishy things. So he posted on Twitter, he said, here it is here, and you can see my response to it underneath. An independent Scotland should have a military force for two purposes only. One, to defend Scotland against attack, and as always in our history, the most likely aggressor will be England. And two, to assist in UN peacekeeping missions, plus some blabbering about NATO. Now, here's a thought, Craig, just maybe. If you're worried about being attacked by England, surely the best option would be not to break up the UK in the first place. How about that? I've solved the problem. You don't need to worry anymore. You can go to bed and not worry about the hordes of Englishmen coming across the border to steal your oil. I mean, really? Absolutely daft. Anyway, he goes on, and there was a wee bit underneath there. So one guy says, oddly enough, England has been invaded by Scotland more often than anyone else. Well, which maybe it's the fact, but Craig says, sadly, not often enough. Right, and they try to tell us they're not Anglophobes. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Murray, Zoomer of the Week.
I have a question for everyone, including you, Mark.
Yes,
See if
go
you
ahead.
can guess. See if you can guess Craig's family/descendant background. Which part of the world? From which part of the world do you think he hails? What religion do you think he might be, and what do you think his views are on the UK Constitution? What do you think, guys?
Well, Murray's a Scottish name.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
That's
Craig
right.
is from an Irish Republican Catholic family, and that
right.
probably, without being stereotypical, colours a lot of his views, I would suggest. But yeah, that is the truth. And I'm not
Well,
told.
yes, of course. Myself and Mary are also from Irish
Indeed.
backgrounds, but
Yep.
that doesn't colour our views.
Indeed. So, it's, as I say, it's absolutely not the case that everybody who's of a particular background goes one particular way on the constitutional at all. But it might help to explain it a little bit, is all I would say, because as you know, I've worked very hard at trying to establish there is a correlation between support for particularly Irish republicanism.
Well, of course there is. I mean, there definitely is as an element of that. I mean, we've talked about it ourselves. You've talked about it at length as well. I was talking about it the other day. For why are so many Scottish nationalists support terrorism?
Exactly right.
And it's a combination of Irish republicanism, the social media influences by Iran that we've talked about in this show, for example, and and just this deep programming, continuous programming that independence is a reality, and when it's not at all, and it's not. People need to be deprogrammed from that, right?
Indeed.
Craig, bit of a nutter. Anyway, what's this here? You're supposed to listen to the Cutter and the Clan to make amends.
Happily, that's me because I said that stuff about Runrig. I'm assuming that's Runrig albums. I only know the Cutter as an Echo and the Bunnymen single, but I'll listen out for it, guys.
Right, yes.
They get me to sleep tonight.
Well, I don't know anything about them, so I'm going to re-listen
for sure.
as well, and when I can. Anyway. I think it. I mean, people. I'm not one of these people like, that's the Nationalists or whatever it is, and they can't create good music. You can still be good music, nonetheless.
Absolutely.
But I'm not saying look at good music, though.
Indeed.
Right, anyway, yes, and I don't think religion should really come into it in any case. Unfortunately, we had sectarianism, a lot of sectarianism in Scotland, and that was a way to divide people, and it's just a new version of that. Alex Salmond took advantage of that sectarianism.
He exploited it, exactly. And some very unscrupulous, opportunistic, cynical politicians do. Many people feel George Galloway does the same thing, exploiting religion in terms of his support for Muslims. Rightly or wrongly, that's what a lot of people think. It's certainly not anyone's contention that if you're Catholic, you're going to be nationalist. Not at all. Far from it. I know very, very devout Catholics who are staunchly, passionately anti-nationalist. I also know a lot of guys who are of the same religion as me and support the same football team as me and are pro-independence. So, it's not by any means a hard and fast rule. It just might help to explain the views of one particular guy who seems fanatically anti-UK. That's all I would say.
Yeah, well, I think there's certainly about part of that. I haven't seen that in him, to be honest. Anyway, he definitely is for his. He's like, imagine having thinking that. That's you're just thinking. I'm really worried that English people are going to invade Scotland.
Oh, they'll all be coming up here to get this cheap tax. That's the thing. They'll all come up here to earn less than £30,000 a year, so they pay 20 quid, 28 quid a year less.
£28 better. You can buy a kebab. Right. Okay. Next up, Zim, we're going to continue the theme. Somewhat okay with David.
Okay, people. My nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Senior Lecturer in Economics at Glasgow University, Jeanette Finlay. Now, Jeanette Finlay, I fear, is probably not a stranger to my Twitter timeline, as you probably know, any of you who follow me. She is the person who used the words bastards and Huns on camera to describe protesters and members of the Orange Order at an anti-racism rally in Glasgow, George Square last year. She actually, during a speech, referred to the Orange Order as bastards. And while talking to police, she said, "Are you going to move the Huns on?" meaning the supporters of the UK. Right. That's the type of invective that Jeanette Finlay regularly uses. She was, or at least was, also a member of the Celtic Supporters Trust, which is a football fans group, quite activist and quite extreme, you could say. And she's very much on board with the Green Brigade, which is Celtic's most extreme group.
Terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Embarrassment to Scotland.
Well, indeed. She's a fanatical Celtic supporter and an occasional apologist for Irish Republican terrorist groups, as she was in the Nicky Campbell show on Radio 5 once, where she said, we might consider, some people might consider terrorists freedom fighters and all that nonsense. And what about the British Army? All that stuff. This is sort of language she uses routinely. Anyway, earlier this week, a gentleman named Brendan Bick was his nickname, McFarlane, died and was then subsequently buried in Belfast. And last night, the Celtic supporter at a match against Aberdeen held aloft a giant banner commemorating his life. And there's a big image of this guy, massive big thing. And Finlay then retweeted an image of the banner, accompanied by words she typed saying, "Said he was a rebel then, he's a hero now." There's nothing too unusual in this. Celtic traditionally hold up banners at their ground, putting forth support for either Palestine or the Republic of Ireland. But the only exception is in this case, McFarlane was a convicted sectarian terrorist murderer. And in 1975, he took part in the slaughter of 5 people, most of whom were completely innocent civilians, in Belfast in a bomb and gun attack. And he went to prison for it. This is the person, Ms. Finlay, who is, let me just remind you, a senior lecturer in economics at Glasgow University. This is the person she called a hero. So Miss Finlay will apparently leave Glasgow Uni next month. You may have seen the story that she had applied for a job as professor of economics. She didn't get it. She took them to a tribunal claiming sexism. At least it wasn't racism for once. She didn't win. She was going to appeal, but they said, well, if you do appeal, you'll lose. So they've come to an agreement whereby she's going to leave. Apparently next month is going to be called Professor Emeritus or whatever they call people who are no longer professors. So that's it. So she's leaving Glasgow Uni next month. And all I can say is, thank God. So as a parting gift from me, Mrs. Finlay, you are my Zoomer of the Week.
I just don't see how people can think that that's really acceptable. I mean, you're in civil society, right? And you can't be praising terrorists and people who killed civilians. It's just like, it doesn't matter it just doesn't matter. It's just not the thing.
Yep,
it's the same people who like praise the Hamas, October the 7th, or not even, or they diminish it. Oh yeah, it was Israel's fault. It's like, well, no, the choice. Everyone's got a choice. That's the thing. Your choice in how you run your life. And
absolutely.
Sad lady, actually. Sad lady.
It's clearly a woman with real issues of historical grievance, which really weigh her down, clearly. And God knows what she says to her students. But anyway.
I know.
Very, very bizarre.
Try to get away from that. Doesn't she run some anti-sectarian organisation or something?
Well, she's involved with, is it Nil by Mouth? I think she may be, which
no, it's not that. It's called something else. But yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Call it out. But
that's the one.
Sorry, that's about calling out anti-Irish racism and anti-Catholic what's the word, bigotry in Scotland. That's what that's all about. So it's very much one way, and that clearly is the way that she views the world.
I mean, if you can't be doing you can't be, calling it out when you're doing it.
Well, exactly. Quite right. If you're calling people Huns and bastards, I mean, it's like me saying this sectarianism's terrible, and it's all the fault of those Fenians. I mean, you can't say that stuff, guys.
No,
You
it's no good.
genuinely can't say that.
Well, I wasn't brought up in a culture of that. My parents were not interested in any of that, and and that was that was the thing. So I'm not involved in any of that.
I know
no football rivalry, nothing like that for me. And I just look at it and I just think, jeez, glad I'm not involved in that. Now, Mary isn't here tonight, but I've got something special for you. That is the thing. She wanted to show you this as her Zoomers. Now, I have to be careful. Sorry, you've got to. Some of you could take offence to this. Could be shocked, horrified. In fact,
our former First Minister and fucking legends are here tonight.
Well, that was, of course, the infamous Nicola Sturgeon, who has been arrested, for embezzlement, not charged yet, with Alan Cumming, who is host of The Traitors USA and film star, calling her a legend. Now, I would like to know what is legendary about Sturgeon in a tank top. That's what I would like to know. What is the legend going on? She failed in almost everything she did. Yep. And we saw her earlier on in her failing not even to be able to call a rapist a man. That is a pretty basic failing, if you ask me. But anyway, there they are, loving it up on stage there in Pitlochry, which is, of course, getting tons of SNP money because of his association with the party. Anyway, now, I said on Twitter, that's the first thing you see when you arrive in hell. Imagine the doors of the elevator open. You see that, you're like, oh, no, please, no, that's enough. Anyway, so we shall do that as Mary's. Does Mary win? Well, David, you can decide, actually. Tonight.
Well, it seems that even my most loyal backers here have jumped ship as soon as Mary's Zoomer appeared there. So, yeah, very, very happy to give it to Mary this week. Yes, well done, Mary. Fantastic.
Yes,
very well
changed her mind. She seems to spend her life in the company of gay groups, despite denying she is gay. Well, people can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, but I think the tank top, she gets some style advice from the gays. That would probably be a good idea. What is it? Queer eye for the
straight guy, yeah, exactly.
Queer eye for the XFM. That's what we're really looking for here. Yes, and indeed, Mary wins. I'm not going to put the thing up. Mary does, because here we go. Alan Cumming is a clown. Okay, shan't go there while he's around. Well, yes, probably safer that way. All right. Mary, you are our winner, and you're a winner in life as well. So we miss you anyway. Right, next up, we are so happy to have you with us on the show every week. Discuss number one's politics chat. We'll see you at the same time, same place next Wednesday. Thought for the week is from Ronald Reagan, who, when discussing the size of the government, said, "No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. Government programs once launched never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life you will see on this earth." Not the word voluntary, though. You can only hope that the government will get cut involuntarily at some point. Anyway, and let's hope that extends to the Scottish Parliament. So, thank you for all your help today. We'll see you again next week with, hopefully, Mary will be back. Thank you, David, for your insights. It's been really good. Thank you all for your comments. It's been really special to I normally can't read them all because they're coming back. I do other stuff, but this time I've read every single comment.
Well done.
And it's been great. Yes, we will give our best to Mary. So thank you very much. And please tell your friends. And we will. What's that? Not so good without Mary. What kind of thing is that? What kind of thing is that? We did our best over here. Everyone's a critic. That's what I'm saying. Everyone's a critic. Really, anyway, we will see you again next week. So thank you all for.
Cheers, guys. I'm going to go and play something wonderful by Runrig. Have I got that right? Did they sing that? I think they did. I don't know. Anyway.
Right. Okay. Let's get back to the thing here. All right. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
See you next week, guys. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.